Hello, welcome to Music of the Armenian Liturgy. My name is Armenia Sarkisian, and today we're going to be discussing the Mereti Unduryalt. Like always, the time codes are in the description box below if you want to skip ahead to my interview with Reverend Narek Garabedian from Chicago. We discussed the theological significance of this Mereti and much, much more, so stay tuned for all of that, and let's get started with the historical background of this Mereti. Before we start, I just want to mention that this episode would not be possible without the help of Professor Haig Utidjian, who is a conductor, musicologist, and patristic scholar, which is the study of ancient Christian writers. Among many other awards, he is the recipient of the Gomidas Medal of the Republic of Armenia. Haig has been generously sending me articles and lectures in order to aid my preparations for this episode. He even sent me photos out of his new book, Treasures of the Earliest Christian Nation, which I will link below along with the 2 lectures that I will be referencing quite a bit in this episode. Unduryalt is a sacred ode. At the same time that the celebrant is reciting St. Gregory of Narek's prayer to the Holy Spirit, drawn from the Book of Lamentations, if the servant is a bishop, Unduryalt needs to be sung. Something sort of interesting is that there are plentiful stanzas on standby, because the first part of the prayer needs to be repeatedly recited until confidence in the upward contemplation of light be wonderfully revealed to the celebrant. In other words, until the moment where the celebrant feels confident enough to move forward with the rest of the Mass, the choir or soloist needs to keep singing the Mereti. Today we'll be looking at the most well-known version of this ode, transcribed and arranged by Archimandrite Gomidas. But there are much lesser known and rather beautiful arrangements by Pietro Bianchini and Abbot Arsen Aydinian. Bianchini's first arrangement dates as early as 1862. Gomidas would have been about 8 years old. His initial and precise transcriptions fell sometime between 1857 and 1861. He was preoccupied by this work for decades, which allowed him to produce several versions of this Mereti. The first, like we mentioned, in 1862, the second in 1877, and the third was left undated. Bianchini served as the Maestro di Cappella, director of music for the Utidjian Fathers in Venice until 1898. He was also a child prodigy. If you want to learn more about him, please do reference the links that I mentioned earlier in the description box below. We will return to Bianchini in the future, but I certainly thought he was worth mentioning today. Abbot Arsen Aydinian, along with Joseph Boehm, arranged an entire Armenian orchestral mass, which included another version of Unduryalt. The Mass premiered in Vienna on April 11, 1887, on the occasion of Aydinian's episcopal ordination. So far, this is the oldest known existing copy of the text for Unduryalt with musical markings, known as neumes. This 17th, 18th century manuscript has been preserved in the collections of the Utidjian Fathers in Vienna. Among the collections of the Venetian Utidjian Fathers on the island of San Lazzaro in Venice, there is a manuscript that dates even earlier, but does not include any of the neumes. This manuscript from 1663 was found in a church by Father Reverend in the 19th century. Unfortunately, as of present, we're unable to decipher the medieval Armenian neumes. However, the brilliant Armenian musicologist Teachin, who lived in Constantinople around the middle of the 19th century, was able to put forward a very cogent hypothesis about how long we should sing the different words of the text based on the corresponding or non-existent neumes. Curiously, none of the surviving arrangements of Unduryalt that we have now match the syllabic movements of this older manuscript, which, according to Teacin's convincing detective work, should be nearing and resembling a 5/4 pattern. Now that we're done with the historical background, let's jump into the fun stuff, my interview with the lovely Reverend Narek Garabedian. Hello! Welcome to Music of the Armenian Liturgy, and today we are in St. Gregory the Illuminator in Chicago, Illinois. I am joined by Reverend Deacon Narek Garabedian, who is the pastor and deacon in charge here at this beautiful church. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us where we would find this Mereti in the Mass?
Yes, so it's interesting that you actually first use the word Mereti. Mereti means melody, literally translated. But where it actually is found in the Mass is in part 1 of the Armenian Badarak. So the Badarak is divided into 2 parts, and the first part is the Liturgy of the Word. And this melody or this music is found in part 1 of part 1, which is the preparation of the communion, the preparation of the priest, when he vests, etc., etc. So the very beginning of the Badarak, sung only when a bishop or the Catholicos does the Badarak, celebrates the Badarak, and it actually precedes what is known as the Meredi. So it actually precedes the melody. So the Meredi, for example, in the Armenian Church, is Haig. Exactly. So this would precede where Haig or Norzarig or Horjam would be sung.
So now let's discuss a little bit of the theological significance of the text.
So the theological significance is, of course, in its words. It compares the priest to Moses and Aaron, the first priests, the first high priests that we read from Exodus and in the Old Testament in the first 5 books of the Bible, of course. So the place that Unduryalt is at in the Badarak is right when they ascend to the altar, before the Meredi is sung, before the curtain is closed, and the gifts are presented for preparation, meaning the bread and the wine for Holy Communion. Before they are prepared, the priest continues his preparation. Because as priests, we are mahkanatu in Armenia. We are sinners. We are just like everyone else. And it is our faith that cleanses us. It is Christ that we take on, as the baptismal prayer says. We put on Christ, and thereby we become cleansed or cleaned or forgiven of our sins. And as an unworthy servant, just like the prayer says, we ask that God, make us worthy to come close to the holy altar, come close to the holy Lamb and serve the people. And this hymn, this sharagan, is in that place where the bishop is actually singing, the bishop is actually reading, my apologies, the prayer of Saint Gregory of Narek, and asking to become worthy, to be able to approach the unfathomable, untouchable, the body and blood of Christ. So a self-preparation in order to be able to prepare that which has already been given to us.
And because the point of the Badarak is really the communion, so you're cleaning yourself in order to execute that.
Yes, and so it's interesting. I mean, we're recording this right before American Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving, we're giving thanks for all those blessings we have. Well, the Badarak part 2, and that's a different video, of course. Part 2 of the Badarak is the Eucharist, the prayer of thanksgiving. And so first we get together, we gather, we learn, we come to the teaching, which is the part 1, the liturgy of the word, as I said. We prepare, just like you would prepare a Thanksgiving dinner at home, we prepare for the feast that we are about to receive around the heavenly table, around the heavenly banquet that we're gathered and invited to.
So Reverend Narek Garabedian spent 4.5 years studying in Jerusalem in the Armenian Patriarchate, and he spent some time with our Gomidas. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So I did not spend time with Gomidas himself, but yes, we're very blessed living in the diaspora outside of Armenia and even within Armenia to hear different versions of Badarak. Whereas in Jerusalem, the blessing that we had, especially as seminarians, is Gomidas's sharagans, Gomidas's music is written very much for a male choir. And in Jerusalem, we didn't have an organ, we didn't have other musical instruments which we are kind of accustomed to. In Jerusalem, it is done the old school way, the old-fashioned way. It is only voices. And so we would utilize and have the opportunity to sing Gomidas's music, Gomidas's Badarak, above any other. Of course, we had variations in the Dervogormias, in the Meredis, because Meredis were not just written by Gomidas. But melodies such as Chorur Chorin or such as Unduryalt, which very much resonate that, oh, this is Gomidas's. We were very happy and very blessed to have the chance to sing those. Gomidas, though he himself, I don't think, ever traveled to Jerusalem, he remains an example of what Armenians are very, respected and known for. I mean, we know Gomidas for his folk songs, we know him for the Badarak, but he was a man that learned European music, that learned worldly music, and he contributed. I think he also had a impact on Kurdish music,
Yeah.
and so we very much see Gomidas's greatness, his hanjar, as an Armenian word, in not just Armenian music but everywhere. And I think that's really his identity, that his footprint that he left. Instead of remembering that he suffered during the genocide, instead of remembering that he only wrote a badarak, Gomidas was much more than that.
He was exploratory, but cared a lot about preservation, and
Yes.
all helped each other in so many beautiful
Very
ways
much
that
so.
we benefit from. So
Yeah, I mean, there's in his early years from Gomidas's life, anecdotally, I've heard stories where it's not so much that he wrote music, but he would sneak off into villages and hide in trees, and he would listen to the villagers singing, and he would write down the music, go home, go back to the seminary, go back to Echmiadzin, wherever he lived at that time, and he would notate it and then try to clean it up. For example, Horovel, which is a very commonly known song in Armenian folk music. There is a number of different versions of Horovel, because Horovel was the villager's song. And so Gomidas actually went, he didn't write Horovel, he found, or he heard Horovel, he notated and cleaned it up.
yes.
So,
Well, actually, I remember reading something about he was very concerned about taking any of the Armenian melodies and stripping away any of the Kurdish or Turkish influences and cleaning it and making it truly Armenian melodies. So that definitely lends to some of his character, that
Yeah.
he's the cleaner upper in a lot
he's
of ways.
cleaner upper, he has a traditional aspect, he's very conservative, but he's also, like you said, he explores, he learns, he develops. He was a great loss to the Armenians.
Yeah.
But that spirit by which he was ordained to the priesthood, that poetic name that he took on, and the legacy he's left, I mean, that's not over. That's not, as they say, you can kill a man, you can't kill an idea.
Right.
And so as Armenians, they've killed us, but they haven't killed us yet.
Well, I'm very glad that his music has transcended his suffering, and we can discuss him here today. So thank you very much for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless.
So, as a special treat for Music of the Armenian Liturgy, Reverend Narek Garabedian is going to grace us with his voice, and he's going to sing Unduryalt for us.
Only the first verse, of
The
course.
first verse.
Unduryalt.
You truly have a voice for prayer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Music of the Armenian Liturgy. Happy Thanksgiving to all my American friends, and I will see all of you next week with a new episode.